The warning. The Great Hall of Concordia Prime stretched wider than most planetary capitals. Crystalline walls caught and bent light from 3 nearby stars, creating patterns that shifted across the assembled delegates. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, some breathing oxygen, others methane, each protected by their own atmospheric shields. This was the Galactic Council, and today they would decide the fate of humanity's application for membership. Ambassador Thelvan of the Karathi Empire stood at the central podium. His forearms gestured gracefully as he presented humanity's case. The holographic displays showed Earth's cities, their technological achievements, their cultural diversity. To Thelvan, humans seemed like any other emerging species, ambitious, curious, and eager to join the galactic community. The humans have passed all preliminary assessments, Thelvan said, his translator rendering his clicking speech into the common tongue. Their technology, while primitive in some areas, shows remarkable innovation. They have achieved faster-than-light travel independently. They have developed artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and quantum computing. I recommend we grant them provisional membership. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some delegates nodded their various appendages in agreement. Others remained skeptical. The Karathi had sponsored dozens of species over the millennia, and most had integrated smoothly into galactic society. Then the doors exploded inward. Guards moved instantly. Weapons raised but stopped when they recognized the intruder. Commander Shartok of the Xylon Confederacy stumbled into the chamber. His scales were scarred and burned, missing in patches. One eye was gone, replaced by a crude mechanical implant. He had been a war hero once before his species made their terrible mistake. You cannot allow the humans into this council. Shartok's voice echoed through the hall. His translator crackled with interference, damaged like everything else about him. I came here to warn you. You must reject them. You must push them away and never provoke them. Counselor Vextra of the Zephyron hegemony laughed, a sound like grinding metal. The Zephyron were massive beings, each standing 3 meters tall with armored exoskeletons. They had conquered 40 systems and had never known defeat. The Xylon Confederacy grows more pathetic every cycle. First you lose a war to primitives, and now you interrupt our proceedings with paranoid ravings. You don't understand. Shartok limped forward, and the guards let him pass. Everyone knew his story. 30 years ago, the Xylon had encountered humans at the edge of mapped space. A territorial dispute had erupted over a mineral-rich asteroid field. The Xylon, confident in their superior numbers and technology, had attacked a human mining station. They killed everyone aboard, 347 miners and their families. The humans had responded with a fury that stunned the galaxy. They hunted us, Shartok continued, his voice breaking. For 30 years they hunted us. We tried to make peace. We offered reparations. We offered territory. They refused everything. They said we had killed their children and now they would kill ours. Spare us the war stories, another counselor called out. Your species attacked first. You paid the price for aggression. That's how conflict works. No. Shartok slammed his fist on the nearest surface. You don't understand what they are. Every other species in this galaxy fights until it's unprofitable, until the cost becomes too high, until surrender offers a better outcome than continued war. Humans don't think that way. They fight until they win, or until they're extinct. There is no middle ground. Ambassador Thelvan tried to restore order. Commander Shartok, your concerns are noted, but the humans have been peaceful in all our interactions. They seek trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense. They are not the monsters you describe, because you haven't given them a reason to be. Shartok pulled up his own holographic display, showing burned Xylon worlds. We thought we were teaching them a lesson when we destroyed that mining station. Instead, we awakened something terrible. They tracked down every ship, every commander, every politician who had anything to do with the attack. They didn't just defeat our military, they dismantled our entire civilization. Then perhaps you shouldn't have attacked them, Vextra said coldly. The Zephyron have crushed dozens of upstart species. The key is overwhelming force applied immediately. Show them the futility of resistance and they submit. It's basic military doctrine. That's what we thought. Shartok was pleading now. We sent our entire fleet after their response. We outnumbered them 20-1. We had better shields, better weapons, better everything. And we lost. Do you know why? Because they don't fight like us. They don't have rigid military doctrines. They adapt in real time. Every battle they learned. Every defeat made them stronger. And they never stopped coming. The council chamber filled with derisive laughter. Counselor Thex of the ancient Lumina Collective spoke, her voice crystalline and cold. Commander, the Lumina have existed for 50,000 years. We have seen countless species rise and fall. Humans are newcomers, barely evolved from their planetary cradle. This persistence you describe is simply inexperience. They will learn, as all species do, that some conflicts cannot be won. You're wrong, Shartok said quietly. Their entire evolutionary history prepared them for this. On their world, the predators who gave up starved. The prey who gave up died. For millions of years, survival meant persistence above all else. It's coded into their very genetics. They call it perseverance and treat it as their greatest virtue. How quaint, Vextra said. Primitive virtues for a primitive species. This council has stood for 10,000 years because we understand the mathematics of power. We know when to fight and when to negotiate. These humans will learn the same lessons, or they will be taught them. Ambassador Thelvan tried one more time to mediate. Commander Shartok, I understand your trauma, but surely you must see that your situation was unique. You attacked their civilians without provocation. The council would never make such a mistake. We operate on principles of law and mutual respect. Shartok looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. He saw the dismissal in their expressions, the arrogance born of millennia of dominance. They had no concept of what humanity represented because they had never encountered anything like them before. I came here because I thought you deserved a warning, Shartok said. My people are scattered now, refugees among the stars. We live in fear that somehow, somewhere, a human will discover one of our hidden colonies and finish what they started. They told us they would hunt us forever, and we didn't believe them either. Not until it was too late. This council will not be intimidated by ghost stories, Vextra declared. Guards, remove this broken creature from our presence. As the guards escorted Shartok out, he turned back one last time. You're making a mistake. The worst mistake in galactic history. I pray to the old gods that you never learn the truth of my words. But I fear you will, and when that day comes, remember that someone tried to warn you. The doors sealed behind him and the council returned to its deliberations. Within an hour, they had reached their decision. Humanity's application for membership was denied. Furthermore, economic sanctions would be imposed. The humans needed to be contained, civilized, taught their place in the galactic order. Ambassador Thelvan cast the only dissenting vote, though he couldn't say exactly why. Something in Shartok's eyes had disturbed him, not fear, but the terrible certainty of someone who had seen the future and knew there was no way to prevent it. The message was transmitted to Earth within the day. The humans received it in silence. That silence, Thelvan would later reflect, should have been their first warning. The provocation Admiral Kthresh of the Zephyron hegemony studied the tactical display with satisfaction. Before him floated a holographic representation of Mars, humanity's first colony world. 3,200,000 humans lived there, most in the massive domed cities that dotted the rust-colored surface. They had no idea what was coming. All ships report ready, Admiral, his tactical officer announced. Kthresh nodded, his armored plates shifting with the movement. The Zephyron had built their empire on swift, brutal demonstrations of power. When a species needed correction, you didn't negotiate or issue warnings. You struck hard enough that they never forgot the lesson. The council has been too soft, Kthresh said to his officers. Sanctions and diplomatic pressure mean nothing to primitives. They understand only strength. Today we teach humanity its place in the galactic order. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human colony. They're asking us to state our intentions. Ignore it. Commence bombardment. The Zephyron battle group consisted of 37 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had built. Their plasma cannons could burn continents. Their kinetic weapons could crack planetary crusts. Against the few orbital defense platforms Mars possessed, the outcome was never in doubt. The bombardment lasted 4 hours. When it ended, Mars's domes were shattered, its atmosphere venting into space. 3,200,000 humans died that day. Men, women, children. The Zephyron made no distinction. This was a message written in blood and fire. Kthresh recorded a message and broadcast it across all human frequencies. Attention, humans of Earth. This is Admiral Kthresh of the Zephyron hegemony. Mars colony has been eliminated in response to your refusal to accept the Council's wisdom. You will immediately open your systems to Council oversight. You will dismantle your military. You will submit to our authority. Failure to comply within one planetary rotation will result in similar action against Earth itself. You have been warned. The message was transmitted simultaneously to the Galactic Council. Let them see Zephyron efficiency, Kathresh thought. Let them see how to handle upstart species properly. Earth's response came within 6 hours. It was brief. Message received. Then nothing. Kathresh waited for the surrender, for the pleading, for the desperate negotiations that always followed such demonstrations. Instead, human space went completely silent. Their communication networks ceased all external broadcasts. Their ships stopped moving. Every human station and colony simply went dark. What are they doing? Kathresh's tactical officer asked. They're in shock, Kathresh replied confidently. They've realized the futility of resistance. Give them time to organize their surrender. Days passed, then weeks. The silence from human space remained absolute. A few council members expressed concern, but Kathresh dismissed their worries. They're broken. They're trying to decide which faction will negotiate the surrender. Internal politics, nothing more. Ambassador Thelvan requested permission to contact Earth. The Council denied it. The humans needed to come to them hat in hand, ready to accept their subordinate position. 1 month became 2, then 3, then 6. The Xylon refugee colonies received a different message during this time. Commander Shartok, living in exile on a remote world, was awakened in the middle of his sleep cycle by an urgent communication. The encryption was sophisticated, beyond anything the scattered Xylon possessed. When he decrypted it, he found a simple message. You tried to warn them. Thank you. When this is over, come to Earth, you'll find sanctuary there. Humanity remembers its friends. It was signed with coordinates he recognized, the exact location of the mining station where this had all begun 30 years ago. Shartok immediately tried to contact the Council. He was blocked. He tried to contact the Zephyron directly. No response. In desperation, he sent messages to every delegate he could reach. The humans are preparing. The silence means they're coming. You must negotiate now while there's still time. His warnings were dismissed as the ravings of a traumatized veteran. On Earth, something unprecedented was happening. Every major corporation had ceased civilian production. Every factory, every shipyard, every research facility had been converted to a single purpose: war. Humanity had mobilized its entire economy, transforming itself into a weapon aimed at the heart of the galaxy. But it wasn't the frantic preparation of a desperate species. It was methodical, calculated. Human scientists analyzed every scrap of data they had collected on galactic species over decades of observation. They identified weaknesses in Zephyron armor. They studied Council fleet tactics. They developed weapons specifically designed to counter technologies they had only recently learned existed. The human military, small by galactic standards, was reorganized from the ground up. Traditional command structures gave way to something more fluid, more adaptive. Every officer, every soldier was taught to think independently, to innovate under pressure. Because that's what humans did best. They adapted. In orbital shipyards around Earth, Jupiter, and Saturn, new vessels took shape. They were smaller than Council warships, but faster, more maneuverable, and they carried weapons that would surprise the galaxy. Railguns that could punch through shields designed to stop energy weapons. Missile swarms controlled by AI that learned and adapted in real time. And most terrifying of all, boarding pods designed to deliver human marines directly into enemy vessels, a tactic every other species considered insane. 6 months after the destruction of Mars, the silence broke. A Zephyron patrol encountered a human fleet at the edge of their territory. Kathresh, monitoring from his flagship, felt a moment of triumph. Finally, the humans were surrendering. He opened communications, ready to accept their submission. Instead, he heard, "This is Commodore Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. For the murder of 3,200,000 civilians on Mars colony, humanity declares total war on the Zephyron hegemony. We will accept nothing less than complete capitulation. Any Zephyron who wishes to surrender individually will be granted asylum. Any who continue to fight will be eliminated. This is not negotiable. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Then the human ships opened fire. Kathresh watched in disbelief as his patrol was systematically destroyed. The human vessels moved like nothing he had ever seen. Erratic, unpredictable, yet coordinated. They targeted weapon systems first, crippling his ships before destroying them. The few that tried to escape were hunted down. Within an hour, the entire patrol was gone. The humans broadcast the engagement across all channels, ensuring the galaxy witnessed the Zephyron defeat. All fleets, converge on human space, Kathresh ordered. We will crush this rebellion immediately. But the humans didn't wait for the Zephyron to gather their strength. They struck next at a Zephyron fuel depot, then a supply station, then a minor colony. Each target was carefully chosen, strategically important but lightly defended. The Zephyron fleet chased shadows while their infrastructure crumbled, and with each victory the humans broadcast the same message. We are coming for those who gave the order. We are coming for Admiral Kathresh. We are coming for every counselor who sanctioned this attack. You killed our children. Now we will follow yours to the end of the universe. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in millennia, they felt something they had almost forgotten: fear. Admiral Kathresh, in his flagship, finally understood what Commander Shartok had tried to tell them. The humans weren't fighting a war. They were executing a sentence, and they would not stop until judgment had been delivered. The silence from human space hadn't been shock or despair. It had been preparation. Humanity had spent 6 months transforming itself into exactly what the galaxy feared most: an enemy that would never, ever stop. The hunt begins. The Zephyron military base on Kelesthark was considered impregnable. Massive shield generators protected it from orbital bombardment. Anti-ship batteries could target vessels thousands of kilometers away. An entire division of Zephyron ground forces maintained garrison there. It was a fortress that had stood unchallenged for 2 centuries. The humans destroyed it in 17 minutes. They didn't announce their arrival. They didn't demand surrender. The first indication of attack was when the shield generators exploded simultaneously from within. Human infiltration teams had been in position for days, studying the base, learning its rhythms, waiting for the optimal moment. The moment the shields fell, the orbital strike began. But these weren't the plasma weapons or kinetic bombardments the Zephyron expected. The humans dropped what they called rod-from-God projectiles. Simple tungsten rods accelerated to incredible velocities. No shields in the galaxy were designed to stop solid matter moving at orbital speeds. The base was rubble before the garrison even understood they were under attack. This pattern repeated across Zephyron space. The humans didn't fight fair. They didn't engage in honorable combat. They struck like predators, silent, sudden, devastating. Then they vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They're avoiding our main fleet, Admiral Kathresh observed, studying the tactical map. Red markers indicated destroyed or damaged facilities. There were dozens now, scattered across the hegemony. They know they can't defeat us in direct combat, so they nibble at the edges like scavengers. His tactical officer wasn't so sure. Admiral, the targets aren't random. They've hit every major fuel depot in the outer systems. They've destroyed 17 supply convoys. They've systematically eliminated our forward operating bases. They're not avoiding a fight, they're preparing for one. Nonsense. We outnumber them 100 to 1. That's what the Xylon thought, sir. Kathresh struck the officer, sending him sprawling. Never compare us to those failures. The Zephyron are the finest military force in the galaxy. These humans are raiders, nothing more. When we find their home, we'll burn it like we burned Mars. But finding human ships proved impossible. They didn't operate from fixed bases anymore. Their fleet was completely mobile, supplied by ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Human vessels didn't have traditional life support systems. The crews wore sealed suits, allowing their ships to vent atmosphere and run cold, making them nearly invisible to sensors. The psychological impact was devastating. Every Zephyron commander knew the humans were out there, watching, waiting. But they never knew when or where the next strike would come. Paranoia spread through the fleet. Ships opened fire on sensor ghosts. Officers saw enemies in every shadow. Then the humans introduced a new terror: the message torpedoes. These weren't weapons. They were communication devices shot directly at Zephyron vessels. They contained recordings from Mars colony, the final moments of the humans who died there. Children crying for parents. Families huddled together as the atmosphere vented. The screams of 3 million people. Each torpedo ended with the same message. You will answer for this. Every single one of you. Some Zephyrin crews went mad. Others deserted. A few even surrendered to human forces, seeking the asylum that Commodore Chen had promised. The humans kept their word. Surrendered Zephyron were treated according to the rules of war, given medical attention, adequate food, and safe internment. This was broadcast across the galaxy. The message was clear. The humans weren't monsters. They were just implacable. Surrender and live, fight and die. The Galactic Council watched the Zephyron hegemony crumble and finally understood their mistake. Emergency sessions convened daily. Various species offered to mediate. The humans rejected every attempt. There's nothing to mediate, Admiral William Foster, the overall commander of human forces, told the council representatives. The Zephyron murdered 3 million civilians in an unprovoked attack. That debt will be paid in full. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier that participated in or supported that attack will be eliminated. When the Zephyron leadership surrenders unconditionally, when they stand trial for their crimes, then and only then will we negotiate terms. You're demanding regime change, Ambassador Thelvan protested. The Council cannot allow one species to dictate the government of another. The Council allowed the Zephyron to commit genocide, Foster replied coldly. You sanctioned our people, isolated us, created the conditions that made them think they could attack us with impunity. You're complicit. All of you. Be grateful we're choosing to punish only those directly responsible. This is madness, another counselor shouted. You're one species against the galaxy. You cannot sustain this war. We're not trying to sustain it. We're trying to win it, and we will. Because unlike you, we don't calculate cost versus benefit. We don't weigh profit against loss. You killed our children. We'll hunt yours to the end of the universe if we must. That's not a negotiating position. That's a fact. The Council tried offering the Zephyron sanctuary. Several species opened their borders, allowing Zephyron civilians to flee the human advance. The humans tracked them anyway. A Zephyron transport carrying refugees entered Karathi space, seeking protection. The Karathi fleet moved to intercept human pursuit ships. Commodore Chen opened communications with Ambassador Thelvan personally. Ambassador, we have no quarrel with the Karathi, but those ships contain war criminals. Surrender them to us or move aside. We will not ask twice. You dare threaten us? The Karathi Empire has stood for 10,000 years. Then it would be a shame to end it over ships full of genocidal murderers. Your choice, Ambassador. But choose quickly. My Marines are already launching. Thelvan watched in horror as human boarding pods accelerated toward the refugee ships. The Karathi fleet moved to intercept. Warning shots were fired. The humans didn't even slow down. They're insane, his tactical officer whispered. They'll die before they reach the transports. But the boarding pods weren't trying to survive. They were missiles with humans inside. As Karathi point defense destroyed most of them, a few got through. Just a few was all they needed. Human Marines, the galaxy learned, were terrifying in close combat. Enhanced with genetic modifications and equipped with powered armor, they tore through Zephyron defenders like a force of nature. Within minutes, they had seized control of the transports. Chen's voice came over communications again. Ambassador, we've secured the war criminals. We're departing your space now. Thank you for your cooperation. The sarcasm was evident even through the translator. The Karathi fleet hadn't fired a single shot in anger. They simply watched as the humans took what they came for and left. Thelvan realized with sinking horror that his empire had just been humiliated without even fighting back. Because fighting back meant war with humanity, and nobody wanted that. The incident sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The humans had violated neutral space, seized ships under another species' protection, and faced no consequences. Because the alternative, going to war with an enemy that never stopped, never forgave, and never forgot, was unthinkable. Other species quietly stopped offering sanctuary to the Zephyron. Better to let humanity have its revenge than risk becoming the next target. Admiral Kathresh, watching his empire dissolve around him, finally understood. The humans weren't waging war in any conventional sense. They were executing a sentence. They had decided the Zephyron would pay for Mars, and nothing in the galaxy would stop them from collecting that debt. He recorded a message to his government. Surrender. Immediately. Unconditionally. before they decide that individual surrender isn't enough, and they want the extinction of our entire species. But it was already too late. The humans had tasted victory and they were just getting started. The Council's mistake. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 3 days straight. Holographic displays showed the deteriorating situation in Zephyron space. Nearly 40% of their territory was now under human control or blockade. The once mighty hegemony was collapsing, and with it, the foundations of galactic order. "We cannot allow this to continue," Councillor Vexitra declared, his armor plates clattering with agitation. Though Zephyron himself, he had been quick to distance himself from Admiral Cathresh's actions. A single species cannot be allowed to dictate terms to the entire galaxy. Today they destroy the Zephyron. Tomorrow they come for the rest of us. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Fear had replaced the arrogance that once dominated council proceedings. The humans had done the impossible. They had made the galaxy's ancient civilizations afraid. Ambassador Thelvan stood, his forearms raised for attention. "Perhaps we should negotiate. The humans have stated their terms clearly. They want those responsible for the Mars massacre to stand trial. If we facilitate this, negotiate." Vextra cut him off. "They violated Karathi space. They seized ships under council protection. They act like pirates and you want to reward them? They act like a species that's been grievously wronged," Thelvan countered. "We sanctioned them. We isolated them. We created the conditions that led Cathresh to believe he could commit genocide without consequence. Perhaps our guilt enough." The voice belonged to High Counselor Zix, the eldest being in the chamber. His species, the Lumina Collective, had guided the council for millennia. "Ambassador Thelvan, your sympathy for these primitives clouds your judgment. We face not a moral question, but a practical one. How do we stop them?" "We can't," Commander Shartok's voice echoed from the gallery where observers sat. All eyes turned to the scarred Xylon veteran. "I told you this would happen. I warned you." "You are not recognized to speak, Commander," Zix said coldly. "Then let me speak anyway." Shartok limped down to the chamber floor. No one stopped him. "You asked how to stop them. You can't, not with war, not with threats. The only way to stop humanity is to give them what they want, justice for their dead. But you won't do that because it means admitting you were wrong. And species like yours don't admit mistakes." "The Xylon learned to submit?" Vextra sneered. "We will not make the same error." "We didn't submit, we were destroyed. Our civilization is gone. We exist now only as refugees, scattered across the galaxy, always looking over our shoulders because we know they're still hunting us. You're about to make the same mistake we did. You're going to fight them, and you're going to lose," the council erupted in angry denials. High Counselor Zix called for order, his crystalline form glowing with irritation. "The council has made its decision. We will assemble a coalition fleet. Every member species will contribute ships. We will corner the human fleet and destroy it. Then we will blockade Earth itself and bring these upstarts to heel." "How many ships?" someone asked. "All of them," Zix replied. "We will gather the largest military force in galactic history. 127 species, thousands of vessels. The humans cannot stand against the combined might of civilized space." Over the following weeks, the coalition fleet assembled at the Kepler Nebula, a neutral meeting point equidistant from major council territories. It was an armada beyond imagination. Dreadnoughts that dwarfed cities, carriers that held thousands of fighters, weapon platforms capable of sterilizing planets. The combined firepower could destroy solar systems. The humans had perhaps 200 ships. The coalition had over 10,000. "They'll run," Admiral Brextar, the coalition commander, predicted confidently. "When they see what we've assembled, they'll flee back to Earth. Then we'll follow and end this farce." But the humans didn't run. They came directly toward the coalition fleet, their small force dwarfed by the assembled might arrayed against them. Every sensor locked onto them, every weapon charged. The trap was set. Admiral William Foster opened communications from his flagship, the UEDS Retribution. His image appeared on every ship's display, a human male middle-aged by their standards with gray hair and tired eyes. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like someone who had seen too much death. "Coalition forces, this is Admiral Foster. You have assembled here to stop us from pursuing justice for the Mars massacre. You claim to represent civilized space, but you defend genocidal murderers. You had a choice to stand with us against atrocity, or to stand with those who commit it. You chose poorly. What happens next is on you. Surrender, Admiral, Brextar responded. Your species has fought well, but this is over. You cannot defeat us all. No, Foster agreed. We can't. But we can hurt you badly enough that you'll never forget this day. Humanity doesn't need to win, Admiral. We just need to make victory so costly that you'll never provoke us again. Fire, Brextar ordered. The Coalition fleet opened up with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Energy weapons and kinetic projectiles filled space, a wall of destruction converging on the human fleet. It should have been instant annihilation. Instead, the human ships scattered like a school of fish, moving in patterns that defied tactical prediction. Their defensive systems, strange clouds of metallic chaff, electromagnetic pulses, decoy drones, confused targeting systems. Ships that should have been destroyed simply weren't where the weapons expected them to be, and then the humans returned fire. Railgun rounds punched through shields that had stopped energy weapons for centuries. The Coalition fleet had designed their defenses around the known technologies of galactic warfare. Humanity had developed something different. Simple kinetic weapons accelerated to ridiculous velocities. Too fast for point defense to track, too solid for shields to deflect. Impossible. Brextar watched as a Kwarathi dreadnought, one of the most powerful ships in the galaxy, was torn apart by a single railgun salvo. How are they doing this? His tactical officer had the answer. Admiral, they're using artificial intelligence. Not VI like we use for calculations, actual AI that learns and adapts. It's predicting our movements, optimizing their firing solutions in real time. That's forbidden. AI warfare is banned under the Treaty of... They never signed the treaty, sir. The battle devolved into chaos. The Coalition fleet had numerical superiority, but the humans fought with a ferocity and innovation that negated the advantage. Worse, they targeted command ships specifically, disrupting coordination. The carefully planned engagement became a brawl. Then the human Marines launched. Boarding actions were considered suicide in modern warfare. Defenses were too strong, casualties too high. But the humans didn't seem to care about casualties. They rammed their boarding craft directly into enemy vessels, breaching hulls, fighting their way through corridors in combat scenarios every other species considered insane. Inside the ships, human Marines were devastating. Enhanced strength, faster reflexes, and most terrifying of all, they worked together with an efficiency that suggested hive mind coordination. They seized control of weapons systems and turned them on the Coalition fleet. They targeted life support, forcing evacuations. They planted explosives and turned mighty warships into floating tombs. A Lumina cruiser was boarded by just 12 human Marines. They captured the vessel in 40 minutes. The entire crew of 3,000 surrendered rather than continue fighting the demons in powered armor, who moved through their ship like death incarnate. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, the Coalition fleet had been shattered. Nearly 40% of the ships were destroyed or captured. The rest were fleeing in disorder. The humans had taken casualties too. Almost a third of their fleet was gone. But they had won. Admiral Foster's battered face appeared on communications once more. This was your warning. Stay out of our way. Every species that continues to shelter Zephyron war criminals will be considered hostile. Every ship that moves against us will be destroyed. We didn't want this war, but you forced it on us. Now you'll live with the consequences. The Coalition forces ran. The mighty civilizations of the galaxy fled before 200 human ships. And as they ran, a new message spread through their ranks, one that would echo across the stars. The humans don't fight fair. They don't follow rules. They use forbidden weapons, suicidal tactics, and they never stop. We cannot defeat them. We can only hope they'll be satisfied with the Zephyron and leave the rest of us alone. High Counselor Zix watched the retreating fleet from his command vessel. For the first time in his species' 50,000-year history, Illumina felt despair. Commander Shartok had been right. They had awakened something terrible, and now there was no way to put it back to sleep. Until it was too late. 20 years had passed since the Battle of Kepler Nebula. The galaxy was unrecognizable. The Galactic Council no longer existed. The Grand Chamber on Concordia Prime stood empty, its crystalline walls dark and lifeless. The species that once ruled the stars were too busy defending their own worlds to maintain the illusion of unified government. The age of galactic civilization was over, replaced by an era of human dominance. The Zephyran hegemony was gone. Not just defeated, extinct. Humanity had hunted them across 3 generations, tracking down every ship, every colony, every individual who bore Zephyran genetic markers. It took 15 years, but they succeeded. The last Zephyran died on a remote ice moon, cornered by human marines who had spent their entire lives training for that moment. When it was done, humanity broadcast a simple message to the galaxy. Justice has been served. Mars is avenged. Let no species ever doubt that humanity keeps its promises. Other civilizations scrambled to make peace. Some succeeded. The Karathi Empire, humbled but not destroyed, had sworn fealty to humanity in exchange for protection. Ambassador Thelvan, the only council member who had consistently advocated for negotiation, now served as humanity's primary liaison to the surviving galactic species. His forearms bore the scars of the new reality, but he had kept his people safe. The Lumina Collective, once the galaxy's eldest civilization, had retreated to their core systems and sealed their borders. They wanted nothing to do with humanity, and humanity, satisfied with their submission, left them alone. High Counselor Zix had died shortly after the war. Some said of grief, others said of shame. His species had learned what Shartok tried to teach them. Some enemies cannot be reasoned with, only avoided. Dozens of other species continued to resist. They fought guerrilla campaigns, hit-and-run attacks, anything to slow the human expansion. But humanity had learned from the Zephyran campaign. They had refined their tactics, improved their weapons, and most importantly, they had established themselves as the galaxy's new order. Human bases dotted the major trade routes. Human fleets patrolled the shipping lanes. Human law governed disputes between species. It was empire by another name, though humanity never used that word. They called it the Pax Humana, human peace. But everyone knew what it really was. The strong doing what they wanted, the weak suffering what they must. The very principle the old council had operated on, now with humanity at the top. On a forgotten refugee colony at the galaxy's edge, Commander Shartok sat in his modest dwelling, watching the news broadcasts. He was ancient now by Xylon standards, his scales dull with age, his cybernetic eye failing, but his mind remained sharp enough to appreciate the irony of what he was witnessing. A human journalist was interviewing him, part of a documentary series about the war. The young woman, barely 30, had never known a galaxy where humanity wasn't the dominant power. To her, the old council was ancient history. Commander Shartok, you tried to warn the council about humanity. Why do you think they didn't listen? Shartok's laugh was bitter. They didn't listen because they couldn't imagine losing. The Lumina had stood for 50,000 years, the Karathi for 10,000. The Zephyran had conquered 40 systems. They thought themselves immortal, invincible. How could primitives from a single world possibly threaten them? But you knew better. You'd fought humanity before. I knew, yes. But even I didn't understand. Not really. I thought you were simply tenacious, unwilling to accept defeat. I didn't realize until much later that defeat wasn't even a concept you acknowledged. You don't fight wars to win or lose. You fight them to conclusion. Complete, total, absolute conclusion. The journalist nodded, making notes. The Zephyran extinction has been controversial. Some species see it as justice. Others call it genocide. It was both, Shartok said simply. The Zephyran committed genocide on Mars. Humanity responded in kind. The irony is that the Council could have prevented it all. If they had accepted your application for membership, if they had treated you as equals, none of this would have happened. 3 million humans would still be alive. The Zephyran would still exist as a species. The galaxy would still have its council. Do you think the Council's dissolution was inevitable? The moment they laughed at my warning, yes. They sealed their fate with their arrogance. They thought the galaxy revolved around them, that they could dictate terms to everyone. Then they met a species that simply didn't care about the old order. You tore down their carefully constructed civilization and built something new on its ruins. The journalist hesitated, then asked, "Do you hate us? For what we've done?" Shartok was quiet for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "I pity you. Because now you're what we were, the dominant power, convinced of your rightness, certain of your superiority. And someday, somewhere, you'll encounter a species even more stubborn than you are. Then you'll learn what we learned. That dominance is always temporary, that empires always fall, and that the strong eventually become weak. The question is whether you'll have the wisdom to recognize the warning signs. You think humanity will fall? Everything falls eventually. The only question is how far and how hard. He gestured to the viewing screen, where news reports showed human fleets patrolling conquered territories. You've built your peace on fear and military might, just like the Council did. You've made the same mistakes they made. The cycle continues. After the interview ended and the journalist left, Shartok sat alone with his thoughts. A message notification appeared on his personal comm, one he'd been expecting. It was from Earth, from the Office of Veteran Affairs. Commander Shartok, as promised, we extend permanent sanctuary to you and any surviving Xylon who wish it. You tried to prevent this war. Though you failed, we remember and honor that attempt. If you wish to come to Earth, coordinates are attached. You and your people will be safe here. Humanity keeps its promises. Shartok stared at the message for a long time. The invitation was genuine, he knew. Humanity did keep its promises, for good or ill. They had promised to avenge Mars, and they had. They had promised to hunt the Zephyron forever, and they had. Now they promised safety to those who had tried to help, and they would honor that too. But accepting meant acknowledging humanity's victory, becoming part of their new order. It meant living under the shadow of the species that had destroyed the galaxy he knew. In the end, he declined. Better to live out his remaining years in obscurity, a relic of a bygone age, than to participate in the empire that had risen from the ashes. His final act was to record a message, to be broadcast across the galaxy after his death. In it, he spoke directly to the species of the future whenever they might exist. I am Commander Shartok of the Xylon Confederacy. I witnessed the fall of the Galactic Council and the rise of human dominance. I tried to warn them what was coming. They laughed. They thought themselves invincible. They learned too late that the galaxy belongs not to the oldest or the strongest, but to those too stubborn to accept defeat. My warning to you, whoever you are, whatever age you live in, when you encounter a species that fights not for profit or glory or territory, but for abstract concepts like justice and revenge, do not provoke them. When you meet beings who pass grudges down through generations like family heirlooms, who teach their children to remember every slight and every loss, leave them alone. The Council laughed at my warning. They said humans would learn, as all species do, that some conflicts cannot be won. They were wrong. Humans don't learn to accept loss. They learn from loss, adapt because of it, grow stronger through it. Every defeat makes them more dangerous. Every setback teaches them new tactics. We thought we were fighting warriors. We were fighting survivors. And survivors, by definition, do whatever it takes to survive. The galaxy learned this truth too late. Learn from our mistake. When someone warns you about humans or any species like them, listen. Because by the time you realize they were right, it will already be too late. Shartok died 3 weeks later, alone in his small dwelling on a forgotten world. The message was broadcast as he requested. A warning from the past to the future. A reminder that empires rise and fall, but the lessons they teach endure. On Earth, in a memorial park built on the site of the first settlement, 3 million names were carved in stone, every person who died on Mars. Beneath them, a simple inscription: they came in peace. They died in war. We will never forget. We will never forgive. We will never stop. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, human ships continued their eternal patrol, watching for threats, maintaining order, enforcing the Pax Humana. The humans had become what they destroyed. The galaxy's rulers, its enforcers, its judge and jury. The cycle was complete. The warned had become the warning. And the galaxy, bloodied and broken, had learned its lesson too late. Never provoke a species that hunts forever.
Captain John Miller stood at the viewport of the U.S. Pioneer, watching the space station grow larger against the backdrop of Proxima Centauri. His heart beat faster than normal. Today, humans would meet aliens for the first time. Captain, the Concordat representatives have confirmed our docking procedures, said Samantha Gray. As the ship's diplomatic officer, she had spent months studying the limited information they had about the 7 alien species who formed the Galactic Concordat. Nervous, Sam? John asked. Terrified, she admitted with a small smile. 4 years of diplomatic training, and nothing covers first contact with 7 different alien species. The Pioneer docked with a gentle shudder. John straightened his uniform and nodded to Sam. "Let's make history." They walked through the airlock with 5 other crew members. The station interior was brightly lit with walls that seemed to shift colors slowly. The air smelled different. Not bad, just alien. A tall, slender being with pale blue skin approached them. It had 4 arms and large black eyes that didn't blink. "Welcome, humans," it said in perfect English. "I am Ilara, liaison to new species. The Concordat welcomes you to Galactic Society." John stepped forward. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we thank you for this welcome." Ilara led them to a large circular room where 6 other aliens waited. Each looked completely different from the others. Some had scales, others fur. One appeared to be made of something like living crystal. The largest alien, covered in red-brown scales with 4 yellow eyes, stepped forward. Its voice came out as a low rumble. "I am High Commander Zethkrol of the Vexari Dominion, senior member of the Concordat. Your species has developed faster than light travel, sooner than expected." John noticed the slight tension in Zethkrol's posture. "We're eager to join the galactic community peacefully," he said. "Yes," said Zethkrol. "Peaceful integration is preferred. The Concordat offers provisional membership. There are rules to follow." Sam carefully opened her digital tablet. "We'd be honored to learn these rules." For 2 hours, they discussed trade, technology sharing, and territory boundaries. The aliens seemed oddly cautious, keeping physical distance from the humans. John noticed they often exchanged glances when they thought he wasn't looking. During a break, Ilara approached John privately. "Your diplomatic officer performs well, but caution is advised with Zethkrol. The Vexari have specific customs regarding eye contact." Before John could ask more, they were called back to the table. "We will now formalize introductions," announced Zethkrol. "Each representative will state their full title and authority." When Sam's turn came, she stood and spoke clearly. "I am Diplomatic Officer Samantha Gray, authorized representative of the United Earth Government." She looked directly at each alien as she'd been trained to do on Earth, a sign of honesty and respect. When her eyes met Zethkrol's, the room suddenly went silent. The Vexari rose to its full height, nearly 9 feet tall. Its scales darkened to a deep crimson. "You dare," it hissed. Direct eye contact is a challenge to authority among Vexari. Sam stepped back. "I apologize. We weren't aware." "Ignorance is not excuse," Zethkrol interrupted. "Such disrespect requires punishment according to Vexari custom." John stepped between them. "Commander, this is clearly a cultural misunderstanding. Officer Gray meant no disrespect. Your customs are not universal law," added John firmly. "We respect your traditions, but my officer will not be punished for following human diplomatic protocol during first contact." The other aliens shifted uncomfortably. The crystalline being whispered something to Ilara, who looked increasingly concerned. Zethkrol's eyes narrowed to slits. "You have been warned, humans. You know not what you provoke." With that, the Vexari stormed from the room. The other aliens quickly followed, leaving only Ilara. "I suggest you return to your ship," she said quietly. "The introductory meeting is concluded." As they walked back to the Pioneer, Sam looked at John with worry. "That didn't go as planned." "No," John agreed. "But something tells me there's more happening here than just a cultural misunderstanding." The Pioneer undocked from the station 30 minutes later, carrying home news of humanity's complicated entry onto the galactic stage. The room fell silent as Captain John Miller finished his report. Around the large oval table sat 12 people who made up the United Earth Government's Emergency Council. The faces looking back at him showed a mix of concern, disbelief, and in some cases, anger. President Richard Hayes leaned forward. "So this alien, this Zethkrol, basically threatened us over eye contact. Yes, sir, John said. But I believe there's something deeper going on. The other aliens seemed almost afraid. Colonel Alan Wright, the military advisor, stood up. His voice filled the room. This is clearly a test. They're seeing how easily we back down. We cannot show weakness now. Dr. Lisa Patel shook her head. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, and she tapped her tablet screen as she spoke. I've been studying the database they gave us. There's almost no information about any species like humans. It's as if they've been removed from the records. Or never encountered, suggested Eric Martinez. The young anthropologist had been brought in to analyze alien cultures. Most of the species in the Concordat evolved in completely different environments than Earth. President Hayes rubbed his forehead. Recommendations. Send another mission, Peter Collins said immediately. The veteran ambassador had been listening quietly until now. This time, I'll go personally. We need to clear up this misunderstanding before it escalates. 1 week later, Peter Collins led a small diplomatic team aboard the U.S. Horizon. Their mission was simple: apologize for the cultural confusion and restart negotiations. They never reached the meeting point. 3 days into their journey, 4 unmarked ships appeared seemingly from nowhere. They were sleek, with designs unlike the Concordat vessels they had seen before. Incoming transmission, called out the communications officer. A voice spoke in broken English. Human vessels, return to your planet. Final warning. Before Collins could respond, the ships opened fire. Evasive maneuvers, shouted Captain Laura Reed. Her hands flew over the controls as the first shots hit their shields. The Horizon wasn't built for combat. It was a diplomatic vessel with minimal defensive capabilities. 2 more hits rocked the ship. Engines damaged. We can't outrun them, the engineer reported. Collins gripped his seat as the ship shuddered. Can we send a distress signal? Already done, Laura said, her face grim. But help is hours away. The engineer looked up suddenly. Captain, I might have an idea. The new experimental drive system. It's not tested for living passengers, Laura cut in. We don't have a choice, Collins said quietly. Laura nodded. Do it. What happened next would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. The engineer activated the experimental system, and the Horizon disappeared in a flash of light, only to reappear 3 seconds later, 2 million miles away. The crew survived, barely. The ship's recording devices captured everything. Back on Earth, the footage of the unprovoked attack spread quickly. Billions watched as unmarked alien ships fired on an unarmed diplomatic vessel. Public opinion shifted overnight. In an underground facility, Eric Martinez was making a discovery that would change everything. Lisa, look at this, he called to Dr. Patel. On his screen was an ancient text from the Concordat database. It mentioned a quarantine sector where death dwells. The coordinates, Lisa whispered. They match our solar system. Alan Wright stood in the president's office, his face solemn. Mr. President, we need to prepare. The second diplomatic mission was an answer to our question. What question is that? Asked Hayes. Whether they want peace, Wright replied. They don't. Across Earth, military facilities hummed with new activity. Ships were recalled from exploration missions. Defenses were strengthened. And deep in the Concordat territory, High Commander Zeth Krull watched recordings of humans surviving the experimental jump that should have killed them instantly. Just as I feared, the Vexari commander hissed to his advisors. They are returning. After all these millennia, the Death Worlders are returning. Eric Martinez hadn't slept in 3 days. His office was covered with screens showing alien text and symbols. Empty coffee cups littered his desk. Dr. Lisa Patel worked beside him, her eyes red from lack of sleep. We need to crack these restricted files, Eric said, rubbing his face. The answer is here somewhere. Lisa nodded. The Concordat gave us their public database, but these encrypted sections keep mentioning Earth's sector. They had been given permission to use all available computing power. Even with that help, breaking the alien encryption was nearly impossible. But Eric had found a pattern. The same symbol appears before mentions of quarantine, he said, pointing to a mark that looked like a twisted star. I think it's not just a word, but a warning label. Lisa's tablet beeped. The computer finished another translation batch. They both leaned forward to read. What they saw made them go silent. Call the president, Eric finally whispered. Now. 2 hours later, they stood in the White House Situation Room. President Hayes, Colonel Wright, and other leaders waited for them to speak. We found something, Lisa began, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. The Concordat database contains references to a species called the Terrans. She displayed images on the main screen. They showed beings that looked remarkably human. According to their records, the Terrans were feared throughout the galaxy. They could survive conditions that would kill other species instantly. Eric took over. The Terrans supposedly went extinct about 50,000 years ago. But their genetic makeup, he paused, looking around the room. It matches ours, almost exactly. The room erupted in voices. President Hayes raised his hand for silence. Are you saying we're these Terrans? Their descendants, most likely, Lisa said. The records say Terrans had extraordinary endurance, rapid healing abilities, and could survive in temperature ranges that other species found deadly. That's just being human, said Colonel Wright. Not to them, Eric replied. What's normal for us is superhuman to them. Their home planets have ideal conditions. No predators, perfect weather, low gravity. They never evolved to survive hardship. Lisa showed more data on the screen. Earth was placed under quarantine long ago. Automated systems were set up to prevent technological development. When we created FTL travel, it triggered ancient warning systems. They're afraid of us, Colonel Wright said, realization dawning on his face. Terrified, Lisa corrected. Imagine meeting a species from myths about unstoppable warriors. The Vexeri didn't get angry because Sam made eye contact. They panicked because we exist at all. President Hayes stood up and walked to the window. Outside, people went about their daily lives, unaware that the galaxy saw them as monsters. So what happens now? A military aide entered the room and handed Colonel Wright a message. His face darkened as he read it. Mr. President, we just intercepted a Concordat transmission. They've called an emergency session about the human problem. Multiple battle fleets are mobilizing. How long do we have? Days. Maybe less. Lisa looked at the data again. There's something else you should know. The records say Terrans weren't just physically resilient. What else? Asked Hayes. They had a psychological trait the aliens found even more frightening than their physical abilities. They called it willing self-sacrifice. The concept of someone choosing to die for others was completely foreign to them. That's just being human too, said Eric quietly. President Hayes turned from the window. So we're dealing with species that think we're their boogeyman come back to life. Yes, Lisa said. And they're not going to wait to see if we're friendly. Across the solar system, humans began to prepare for what was coming. None of them had wanted this fight. But as Colonel Wright said as they left the meeting, they don't know it yet, but they just declared war on the wrong species. President Olivia Warren stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Government. The room was packed with representatives from every nation. Screens around the walls showed millions watching from around the world. 3 hours ago, we received a formal message from the Galactic Concordat, she said, her voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. I will read it now. She lifted a tablet and read aloud. To the human species, your existence presents an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. You will surrender all faster-than-light technology immediately. Your planet will accept permanent monitoring stations. Travel beyond your moon will be restricted. Compliance is mandatory. Murmurs filled the room. President Warren set down the tablet. This is not a negotiation. It is a demand for our imprisonment on our own planet. She looked directly into the main camera. My response was brief. Humanity will not be imprisoned on our own planet. We seek peace, but we will defend our sovereignty. The chamber erupted in applause. When it quieted, her expression grew more serious. The Concordat has declared this response an act of war. Screens around the room changed to show images from Mars and Europa. Alien ships appeared in orbit, firing on human settlements. Our colonies are under attack. Our response must be immediate and unified. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Frank Kowalski gathered the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 50 ships prepared to defend their home system against an enemy they barely understood. All ships report ready, Admiral, said his second-in-command. Frank nodded. At 62, he had never expected to lead Earth's first interstellar war. Launch on my mark. The human fleet accelerated toward the edge of the solar system, where Concordat forces were gathering. Intelligence suggested they outnumbered humans 3-1. On the U.S. Defiant, Lieutenant Kelly Rogers checked her fighter squadron one last time. Her hands moved surely over the controls, though fear gnawed at her stomach. Remember your training, she told her pilots. Their ships are more advanced, but we found they can't handle high maneuvers like we can. Use that. The first battle was chaos. Alien weapons tore through human shields with frightening ease, but human pilots pushed their ships harder than the aliens thought possible. Kelly's fighter took a direct hit. Warning lights flashed as her cabin decompressed. The emergency systems should have knocked her unconscious for safety, but they malfunctioned. Instead of passing out, Kelly reached for her helmet, sealed it manually, and kept fighting. Her console was dead, but the manual firing controls still worked. Through pain and dizziness, she targeted an enemy ship and fired repeatedly. The enemy vessel exploded. 3 more took damage from her relentless attack before reinforcements arrived. Later, in the medical bay, Admiral Kowalski visited her bedside. "You should be dead, Lieutenant," he said bluntly. "Decompression, radiation exposure, G-forces during that last maneuver. Our doctors are baffled you survived." Kelly tried to shrug, wincing at the pain. "Just did what needed doing, sir." The Admiral studied her. "The aliens are retreating from this sector. Your actions gave us our first victory." He handed her a tablet with a classified report. "Dr. Patil analyzed their communications after your attack. They're calling you the Unseen One. They're afraid." On the Vexeri command ship, High Commander Zeth Kroll watched the battle recordings with growing horror. The human pilot had survived conditions that should have been instantly fatal. As the ancient texts warned, he hissed to his war council, "Death cannot claim them easily." One of his officers stepped forward. "Commander, the human resistance is stronger than predicted. We should consider." "We will not consider retreat," Zeth Kroll interrupted. "The Council has decided. Either we contain this threat now, or we face extinction when they spread throughout the galaxy." Back on Earth, President Warren addressed a worried population. "Today we learned something important. They may have advanced technology, but we have something they don't. Resilience. And as long as one human stands, Earth remains free." 6 months passed since the war began. Earth was under blockade. No ships could enter or leave without fighting through Concordat forces. Food was rationed. Cities dimmed their lights at night to avoid being easy targets. But humans did what they always did in hard times. They adapted. In her underground lab, Dr. Lisa Patil worked with a team of scientists day and night. Surrounded by equipment and holographic displays, she studied the data from the front lines. The Concordat races evolved in environments with few natural threats, she explained to Major Chris Daniels. Their bodies never needed to develop our kind of resilience. Chris nodded. The soldier had been chosen to lead a special mission. "So we're tougher than they expected." "Much tougher," Lisa said. "And I've developed something to enhance that advantage." She showed him a small device that looked like a wristband. "This stimulates your body's natural healing abilities and adrenaline production. It makes you even more resilient. Side effects? Chris asked. Exhaustion after it wears off. Potential organ stress with prolonged use. Lissa looked him in the eye. But it might keep you alive where nothing else would. A week later, Chris led a team of 12 enhanced soldiers on a stealth ship. Their mission? Infiltrate a Concordat research facility where captured humans were being held. Their ship slipped past the enemy blockade by hiding in the radiation belt of Jupiter. The aliens couldn't survive there long enough to maintain constant patrols. They boarded the facility during a shift change. The alien guards were unprepared for humans who could function in low oxygen, withstand stun weapons, and keep fighting despite injuries. In the central lab, Chris found what they feared most: humans in transparent chambers, being subjected to terrible tests. Scientists taking notes while people suffered. Get them out, Chris ordered his team, and download everything from their systems. While half his team freed the prisoners, Chris and the others secured the data center. What they found shocked even battle-hardened soldiers. The Concordat was studying humans to find weaknesses. They couldn't understand how humans survived on Earth, a planet they classified as a death world with extreme weather, dangerous predators, and constant competition. One report read, "Subjects continue functioning despite conditions that should cause immediate system failure. They adapt to poisons within generations. They heal from injuries that would be fatal to civilized species." Chris downloaded everything. Before they left, he set up a broadcast system. Images of the experiments were sent to every communication channel in Concordat space. "Let them see what they're supporting," he told his team. On the journey home, many of the rescued prisoners died despite medical care. Their bodies had been pushed beyond even human limits. The survivors told stories that hardened resolve across Earth. The broadcast had unexpected effects. On 3 Concordat worlds, protests erupted. Some aliens couldn't stomach the experiments once they saw them. Political fractures appeared in the once unified alliance. Admiral Kowalski, now leading Earth's entire defense, called a meeting with President Warren. "The Daniels mission gave us valuable intelligence," he said. "And something else, the first sign of division among our enemies." President Warren studied the reports. "What's the status of our forces?" "We're holding, but just barely," Kowalski admitted. "The good news: Dr. Patel's enhancements are working. Our soldiers can fight longer, survive worse conditions, and heal faster than ever before." In the medical wing of the military headquarters, Kelly Rogers finished her rehabilitation. After her historic stand against the Concordat, she had been promoted to captain. Now she walked with determination toward the briefing room, where new pilots awaited her instruction. "The enemy thinks they know what humans can survive," she told the young pilots. "Our job is to show them they haven't seen anything yet." Across the solar system, on bases hidden on moons and asteroids, resistance movements formed. Humanity might be surrounded, but they were far from defeated. And among the Concordat leadership, the first whispers of doubt began to spread. What if this war couldn't be won? General Kelly Rogers stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, Earth's newest flagship. Through the viewscreen, she watched the remains of a Concordat patrol fleet drift silently in space. 1 year into the war, and the tide was beginning to turn. "Report," she ordered. "All enemy ships neutralized, General," her second-in-command replied. "No casualties on our side." Kelly nodded. Her promotion to general had come after 3 successful operations that pushed back Concordat forces from Earth's orbit. Now she commanded the counteroffensive aimed at retaking Mars and Europa. "Send word to Admiral Kowalski. Operation Breakout is proceeding as planned." Back on Earth, in a secured meeting room, something unprecedented was happening. A Concordat scientist named Mielbox sat across from President Warren, Dr. Patel, and Eric Martinez. The alien had defected to humanity, bringing crucial intelligence. Mielvox had 4 arms and pale green skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. His large eyes blinked nervously as he spoke. The Concordat has hidden the truth for generations, he said in carefully practiced English. Humans are not Terrans, but you are similar enough to trigger the ancient fear. Eric leaned forward. You've studied our history. Yes. Your species evolved on Earth without outside influence. The Terrans were different, more advanced. But your genetic resilience, your ability to survive conditions that would kill us instantly. Mielvox's voice trailed off. What aren't you telling us? President Warren asked directly. Mielvox's skin changed color slightly, a sign of distress. The Concordat leadership has known from the beginning that humans pose no threat to galactic peace. This war was started because of fear, not facts. President Warren's face hardened. Millions dead because of fear. Our leaders believe prevention is safer than risking another Terran expansion. Mielvox said simply. I disagree. That is why I am here. In space, General Rogers' fleet implemented what they called Death World tactics. Human ships hid in radiation belts that sickened alien crews. They used volcanic moons as cover, withstanding heat that melted enemy sensors. They dove to pressured depths that crushed Concordat vessels. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them daily. They used that experience now to fight back. On the Vexeri command ship, High Commander Zeth Kroll received dire news. The human counter-offensive had broken through their lines. Mars was being retaken. Europa would fall next. Deploy the bioweapon, he ordered, his scales dark with rage. End this. The bioweapon was released in Earth's atmosphere. It was designed to attack human cellular structures, causing rapid organ failure. The Concordat expected total human extinction within days. Instead, something amazing happened. Some humans got sick, yes. Many died. But within a week, survivors showed resistance. Within 2 weeks, they were immune. Dr. Paddle explained to a stunned military council. Our immune systems evolved to fight thousands of diseases. We adapt faster than any species they've encountered. Armed with Mielvox's intelligence and humanity's growing immunity, Admiral Kowalski planned the next phase of the war. Human ships prepared to push beyond the solar system for the first time. We're not fighting for vengeance, he told his commanders. We're fighting for the right to exist. General Rogers led the first battle group toward the enemy staging area near Alpha Centauri. Her ships moved with confidence now, crews no longer afraid of the vastness of space or the alien weapons. Aboard her flagship, she received a message from Mielvox. It contained the locations of 3 Concordat species who wanted to break away and negotiate peace. They've seen what humans can survive, the message read. Now they fear a war they cannot win more than they fear humans themselves. Kelly smiled grimly as she relayed the coordinates to Earth. The Concordat was fracturing. Humanity had not just survived. They were about to change the galaxy forever. General Kelly Rogers stood on the bridge of her flagship as it approached the Vexari homeworld. Through the viewscreen, she could see dozens of enemy ships forming a defensive line. Behind them, a beautiful blue-green planet rotated slowly. They're hailing us, General, her communications officer said. Kelly nodded. On screen, High Commander Zeth Kroll appeared. His scales had dulled from their once bright red to a muted brown. His 4 yellow eyes looked tired. You have pushed far into our territory, human, he said. But this is where your advance stops. We will not surrender our homeworld. Kelly met his gaze directly. We don't want your surrender, Commander. We want peace. Zeth Kroll hissed in surprise. Peace. After all this, 3 Concordat species have already signed peace agreements with Earth, Kelly replied calmly. The Arathi, Nuum, and Pelex recognize that this war was based on fear, not fact. The Vexeri commander's eyes narrowed. Fear based on history. The Terrans nearly destroyed the galaxy once before. We are not Terrans, Kelly said firmly. Send representatives to discuss terms, or we continue our advance. The communication ended. Kelly turned to see Eric Martinez enter the bridge. The anthropologist had joined her fleet to help understand the enemy. "He's scared," Eric said, "but not just of defeat." "What do you mean?" Kelly asked. "The Vexeri leadership is hiding something. Something big." Eric showed her data on his tablet. "Our intelligence suggests they're preparing to detonate their sun rather than accept defeat." Kelly's face paled. "That would kill billions of their own people. And they think it might be worth it to stop us." Eric shook his head sadly. "They truly believe we're monsters who will destroy the galaxy." In another part of the ship, Major Chris Daniels prepared his special operations team. Their mission: infiltrate the Vexeri capital city and prevent the sun detonation plan. "This isn't about winning anymore," he told his soldiers. "It's about saving lives, theirs and ours." Using stealth technology developed from captured Concordat ships, Chris and his team slipped past enemy defenses. They landed outside the capital city, a sprawling metropolis of crystalline towers and hovering platforms. Working from intelligence provided by Mealvox, they made their way to the Central Archive. If answers existed about why the Concordat feared humans so much, they would be there. While General Rogers kept the Vexeri fleet occupied with peace negotiations, Chris and Eric broke into the archive. What they found changed everything. "This can't be right," Eric whispered as he read the ancient records. "The Terrans weren't wiped out in some great war. They chose exile." The records told an incredible story. 50,000 years ago, the Terrans were the dominant species in the galaxy. They were powerful, advanced, and unstoppable in battle. But a civil war among their own kind nearly destroyed everything. They imposed exile on themselves, Eric continued, his voice filled with awe. They retreated to Earth and deliberately gave up their technology. They created the quarantine to give themselves time to develop a more peaceful civilization. Chris studied the final message from the last Terran leader, translated by their systems. "We choose to forget our power until we learn wisdom." While Eric copied the historical records, Chris and his team located and disabled the sun detonation system. When they returned to their ship, they found the peace talks had stalled. General Rogers reviewed the discovered information with growing understanding. "We need to show this to everyone," she said. "Not just our leaders, but theirs too." She opened a channel to both the Vexeri Command and Earth's leadership. President Warren appeared on one screen, High Commander Zeth Krull on another. "We've found the truth," Kelly announced, "and it changes everything we thought we knew about this war." For the first time in the conflict, both sides fell silent, ready to listen. The moment that would reshape the galaxy had arrived. On the Vexari homeworld, in a grand circular chamber with walls of polished stone, leaders from across the galaxy gathered. Humans and aliens sat together, their differences stark, but their purpose united. President Olivia Warren stood at the center. Behind her, Eric Martinez operated a display showing the ancient Terran records they had discovered. "For too long, fear has guided our actions," President Warren began. "Today, we replace fear with understanding." High Commander Zeth Krull sat rigidly in his ceremonial armor. His yellow eyes never left the human president as she spoke. "The complete historical record shows that the Terrans were indeed our ancestors," Warren continued. "They were powerful, yes. Resilient, yes. But they recognized the danger of their own strength without wisdom to guide it." Eric advanced the display to show the final message from the last Terran leader. The words hung in the air, translated into every language present. "We choose to forget our power until we learn wisdom. Our ancestors chose to retreat to Earth," Warren explained. "They established the quarantine not to protect the galaxy from us, but to give humanity time to evolve a different path. A path where strength serves peace, not conquest." General Kelly Rogers stood at attention nearby. She had lived through the worst of the war, had seen the horror and courage on both sides. Now she watched history turn a new page. "We are not your ancient enemy," President Warren said, looking directly at Zeth Krull. "We are what they hoped to become." The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, Zethkrol rose to his feet. His voice, usually harsh, was surprisingly soft. For generations, we were taught to fear the return of the Deathworlders, he said. We never questioned why they disappeared. We never asked if they might have changed. He stepped forward until he stood face to face with President Warren. We declared war on you because of ancient fears, he admitted, and you offer peace despite modern injuries. Perhaps the Terrans did learn wisdom after all. One by one, the representatives of the remaining Concordat species joined them. The formal treaty that ended the war became known as the Solar Accords. It recognized Earth's sovereignty and humanity's right to explore the stars. In return, humans would share their medical advances and help rebuild worlds damaged in the conflict. 6 months later, Captain John Miller stood in the entrance hall of a new academy built on Mars. Children from Earth and various alien worlds played together in the gardens outside. He smiled at the sight. Beside him, Dr. Lisa Patil adjusted a memorial plaque listing those lost in the war. "Do you think we've proven ourselves wise enough?" she asked quietly. John considered the question. "I think we're learning. The Terrans gave up everything to start over. We don't have to go that far. We just have to remember what they learned the hard way." A group of young students approached, led by a Vexari child and a human girl walking side by side. They stopped before Captain Miller, their eyes wide with curiosity. "Is it true you were there at first contact?" the human girl asked. John nodded. "I was." "And did you really start a war by looking an alien in the eye?" asked the Vexari child. John laughed gently. "Not exactly. The war started long before that, with fear and misunderstanding on both sides." "Are you going to tell us the story?" another child asked hopefully. John looked at the mixed group of children, the future of this new galactic community. "Yes, I think it's important you hear it." He led them to a classroom where a window looked out toward the stars. As the children settled, he began. "They say we're the galaxy's deadliest species, and that's partly true. But what makes us deadly isn't our strength or our resilience." He smiled at their attentive faces. "It's our capacity to learn from our mistakes. That's what our ancestors wanted us to discover for ourselves. And that's the true story of how humanity found its place among the stars."